Welcome to our Alaska video. On August 7th, 2025, Brian and I flew to Vancouver, Canada to start our Alaskan cruise. We were on Radiance of the Seas and we got there a day early so we could spend the night at the Hyatt. We walked to the ship the next morning and you can see us walking here. It was at the Port of Vancouver, which check-in went very smoothly. It was actually very fast. And we got on the ship that day.
Alright, off we go. Radiance of the Seas.
This is our favorite kind of walking down the aisle onto a ship. Of course, we had to use our free drinks and stand by the Radiance sign and then get some ice cream.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Next one, sir?
After the ice cream, we walked around the ship. We saw the back where all the kids would be playing if we had them. We went up to the Diamond Lounge, and this is where you look out. And then, since it was a sea day, we went to the pool. We had some hot chocolate on the porch. I hung out on our balcony and looked at the internet. And then we walked around the ship with the Insta360 and we got some cool shots off the railings and off the back of the ship. You'll see the Radiance of the Seas sign. And then we went to our only formal dinner night and they sang happy birthday to Brian since it was celebrating his 40th birthday.
Happy birthday to you, Brian. Happy birthday to you, Brian. Happy birthday, dear Brian. Happy birthday to you. Thank you.
After the birthday celebration at dinner, we hung out in the Centrum, and this is the Centrum where it overlooks all the singers and dancers, and it's just a nice peaceful way to spend the night. And you can see you can sit on pretty much any floor and hear everything going on in the Centrum. So it's really fun. And we took some pictures with the ship photographers, but we didn't buy them because we got some pictures later on. But the pictures were super cute, so I would have gotten them if we didn't get any by the glacier later on. So the next day we were going to be in Juneau, but we weren't going to dock until about 1:30 in the afternoon. And look, it's like 60 degrees high, 100% chance of rain. So this was in the morning, making our way through the fjords. You can see we're getting to Juneau. We went to the Crown and Anchor Society thing to see who was on board. And then we got pictures off the balcony. Juneau, we made it. Yay. So that's the ship pulling into Juneau. It was very exciting because it was a long morning. Then we walked around the town because we didn't know what we were going to do since our helicopter ride to the glacier had been canceled. We did have to ride a tram to get to the town because our port was a little bit further away, so luckily we got on quickly. Then we found our names at one of the gift shops and we decided that we should go canoeing. We stopped at one of the little huts that were selling excursions and we said, find us something fun. So here we are in the absolute downpouring rain in our suits to go canoeing.
Going on a canoe trip.
It was definitely wet, and this was the canoe that we were going in. We had 10 passengers on our canoe, and then that was our guide. So you can see Brian and I got the middle seats. There was a family of 4 in front of us, and then a few friends, like 4 different friends behind me. Yep. So as you can see, the GoPro was pretty wet because it was misty and gross, but as we got closer to the glacier, it got better and better. So at first I didn't know how I was going to hold my Insta360, and so a lot of these shots are just us sitting there taking one of our breaks. They gave us a little snack bag so we could have snacks and water in between because, man, your arms started hurting pretty quickly after you were canoeing for a while. So this was one of the little islands that jet out that we were looking for animals on the island. And then I figured out a way to put my Insta360 into my life jacket, and so it's like hanging above my life jacket. And that's how I got these shots of us canoeing to the Mendenhall Glacier. And if you look behind it, so even now, like the visitor center is beyond that waterfall, and so hardly anybody is able to get this close to the Mendenhall Glacier. So that's the glacier right in front of us. And we got really, really close. So that's the glacier's on the left, and then the waterfall's on the right, kind of behind us. And the visitor center is even further away than that, and most people just go to the visitor center.
Welcome to Mendenhall Glacier.
We took about a 17-minute break while at the glacier because our canoe was so much further ahead of the other canoe. There were 2 canoes that went on our excursion. And this is Nugget Falls. So that's the waterfall we were passing in all the pictures, and it was huge and awesome. Back to the Mendenhall Glacier. While we were there, we learned that the suicide basin inside of the Mendenhall Glacier was about to burst, and it was going to cause major flooding in Juneau. And so our guide said that in the next, 12 hours to 6 days, this suicide basin would break. And so he said that there might be a lot of water if it broke while we were out on the water, but it didn't. It ended up breaking about 2 days later, and all of our phones were going off with emergency alerts saying that we should get out of Juneau, and it was kind of interesting, but no problem. So that's the other canoe that was behind us, and they were not in sync at all, so no wonder it took them a long time to get there. But our canoe was super duper fast. We were all pretty much in sync. Maybe the guy behind me wasn't, but that's okay. And we had a good time on this canoe trip, and we ended up making friends with the 8 other people on our ship, and we saw them throughout the whole cruise, so that was fun. Since we booked this in downtown Juneau at one of the little shops, I figured we should remember that it was Liquid Alaska Tours so we could give a good review. And this is the map of the lake that we canoed on. It was about 2.5 miles to get to the glacier and 2.5 miles back. We stopped at the campground to put our canoe in the water.
Welcome to Juneau.
After our canoe trip, we decided to walk downtown and maybe get some crab legs at the King Crab Shop. So the one downtown was really busy, so we walked a little off downtown, and when we saw the menu, crab legs were about $280, so we quickly turned around, took some nice pictures of our ship, and then we made it back to our ship on time. We left at like 9 o'clock at night, so it wasn't very hard, but we had a good time and we made it back. Welcome to Icy Strait Point, Alaska. First one's off the ship. On day 4, we were at Icy Strait Point, as you can see. It was another rainy day, and we were there for a very long time. I think we docked at like 8 in the morning, and we were leaving at 8 in the afternoon. So the first thing we did was decide to go kayaking right after our canoeing, so our arms were very sore that night. But the morning was rainy and cloudy, and we were hoping to see whales and wildlife while we were kayaking, but unfortunately we didn't see anything. We just got really, really wet. Well, coming up you'll see that we did see a sun star, but that was about it. And because it was just the 2 of us, we were able to set our own pace, and we went pretty quickly. We were expecting maybe more people on our tour, but it was just us. So these were the people that were helping us. That was our safety boat. And that is a sun star. And they are huge, and they smell really bad when they get on your jacket sleeves. So both of our jackets were kind of smelly for the rest of the trip. It was really pretty though, and it was fun to hold the sun star. So I'm glad we did that. When we got after the sun star, we kind of took a little break and just enjoyed the views around us. And we tried to find some eagles, and they said there was an eagle's nest, but it was very hard to see. And as we were getting back, it started raining again, as you can see. But our guide was really, really nice, and we had a good time. After our kayaking adventure, we took the bus back to the ship to have lunch, because the kayaking was from about 9 to noon, and then we had an ocean raft from 1 to 4. So we went back to the visitor center. We saw some statues like this orca.
Welcome to Icy Strait Point.
We had lunch on the ship, and then we made our way to this ocean raft adventure. We purchased this excursion through the ship because we didn't know what to expect in Icy Strait Point. It is a smaller port than most of the other ones, so it's a little less touristy, and it's a little bit more run by the ships, and so we didn't really find much else online. So we booked through the ship. Anyway, it was a really fun adventure, and we finally were not using our arms to paddle, so I liked that about it. And we did see some sea lions and whales, and that random guy in Photoshop. So there's the first whale that we saw. So we saw we saw only humpback whales. We did not see any orcas. But when you read about Icy Strait Point, you read about how you'll see so many whales, and I mean, we saw a few, but not tons. And so those were the pretty sea lions on the little buoy. And then we made our way back to the ship, got into our normal clothes again, and then back on to the next day. On day 5 of the cruise, we were in Sitka, Alaska, and we decided to do something different. We went to Selkie Snorkels, which is something that I found on alaskashoreexcursions.com. Usually I think the tours are maybe 8 to 10 people, but for our tour it was just the 2 of us. So we had a private snorkeling tour in Sitka. So we did not think that anyone was going to show up because it told us to meet at a certain time, and that time was long past. So we kept on trying to find someone, and then this lady drove up in kind of a beat up car, and she was like, "Are you guys here for snorkeling?" And we said yes. So we got in this random lady's car and we drove to the little shop, and we changed into our wetsuits, which were very, very tight. Neither of us had ever worn a full wetsuit.
Snorkeling in Sitka.
And she warned us that it would be a little chilly when we first got in the water, but then it would warm up because our wetsuit would keep us warm with our body heat. And we loved this tour. It was so much fun to see all the starfish, and there's a lot of little crabs that we saw, and then little schools of fish. This is the kelp that was all over the ocean. It was kind of gross to swim through this stuff, but it was all over the place. We tried to take selfies with our GoPro in the water. And then she would swim down and she would find stuff for us to look at. So she found a little starfish coming up and a sea cucumber. So she was a lot of fun.
So, they did really good cartoon. Yeah, it's called a blood scar.
A blood star, yeah. So great.
Yeah.
So Brian and I tried to also swim down, but our wetsuits pretty much made us stay at the top. It was very hard to swim down. You floated pretty far. But look at her go. She swam way down there and she picked up the sea cucumber, and I thought that this was the coolest thing that she brought up for us.
Okay, this is a sea cucumber.
That thing's massive.
Isn't it crazy? Here, feel it. It's really weird.
Oh, sorry.
You're good, you're good.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so these are people fish them and eat them for Chinese markets.
Interesting.
Yeah. And they're just like, they just crawl around at the bottom and eat kelp.
Once we were finished snorkeling in Sitka, our guide took us back to the shop where we got out of our wetsuits, and then she drove us straight to the cruise ship port because we didn't need to go back downtown in Sitka. So it was very convenient. On the next day, we arrived in Skagway, Alaska, and Skagway is known for its gold mining and the White Pass Railway. So of course, we booked the White Pass Railway.
Skagway, Alaska.
This is a map of the White Pass Railway. You start at the bottom, you go 20 miles north to White Pass Summit, and then you turn around and go back. Bridal Veil Falls is really popular in there, and Rocky Point, and you go through a couple of tunnels. So on our car, we were like the third car back, there is an observation deck both in the front and the back, which I stood outside most of the trip to take nice pictures. Surprisingly, not very many people were standing on that observation deck, and they just chose to stay inside the train. But then you're taking pictures through the window and there's no way to open them. So I, of course, was outside. With the Insta360, I was able to get the top of the train like this and get turns like that. And you can see we went over a couple bridges with some really pretty waterfalls or rivers, whatever they were. And this was the first tunnel that we went through. So you go across this bridge, and you go through the tunnel, and it got really, really dark inside the tunnel. It was really cool. Once you get to the White Pass Summit, you turn around and you're officially in Canada at that point, but it doesn't require a passport because you're going to get right back down to Alaska. So now we just took some pretty pictures of the train, And this was day 6 of our cruise, and it was technically our last port day, because the next day on day 7 we were visiting the Hubbard Glacier. So we had fun in Skagway. We just did the train. We didn't do anything afterwards. We had to leave pretty early that day, so there wasn't any time after the train. Looking back on it now, we probably should have booked the helicopter to a glacier and dog sledding, because the one that we had booked in Juneau was canceled, and the one that was in Seward was also canceled. So should have done that. Brian walked around town for, I don't know, 5-7 miles or so. He walked a long way, and I came back to the room and edited videos. And once we were back on the ship, we did walk around, and it was really windy, but we tried to take some pictures, but that was it. So the next day was our last full day on the ship. It was day 7, and we were visiting Hubbard Glacier between 9 and noon. After the noon, we were going to leave the Hubbard Glacier and make our way to Seward, Alaska, where we were going to depart the ship. But from 9 to noon, the ship was really nice. They had some hot chocolate stands out, and everybody was all around the decks to view the Hubbard Glacier. But a lot of people went to the helicopter pad, which is where we went. We didn't know how far we were going to get into the Hubbard Glacier area. They, of course, had a little boat that you could go on for $700 per person to get really close to the glacier, but we chose not to do that. We chose to stay on the boat. But those are pictures from the boat where you can see our ship. Somebody shared them on Facebook, so I stole them. But it was, I don't think it was worth $700 to get on that little boat to see it, because we did get decently close just being on Radiance of the Seas. My favorite part of this day was that the ship photographers were out on the helipad, and so we were able to get our pictures. We each get one free digital picture, so this is where we got them. And I also love this view of the Radiance sign on the ship using that Insta360. So the ship wasn't too busy on the helipad. It did get quite busy when we were really close to the glacier, but there was enough room for everybody, and once you see it, and then you turn around and go back. So that's how the glaciers are. Although it sounded really cool. There was ice obviously falling off in the middle of the glacier because you could hear loud sounds from it, and I thought that was interesting. On day 8 of the cruise, this was our disembarkation day. We got to Seward, Alaska, and we got off the ship thinking that we were going to do a glacier, a helicopter to a glacier, and then dog sledding, but because it was so windy, they told us that it was canceled, but instead they asked if we wanted to do the non-glacier dog sledding, so that's what this is. We went to Turning Heads Kennel, and we got to dog sled with these dogs. They were hyper, which is exactly how I remember them from Juneau last time that I was there. And it was still fun, and probably a good thing that we avoided the helicopter in the wind, so it was the safe excursion option. So this is us in the dog sled and working with the dogs. They love to work, and we got to see a few puppies. Those were super cute, and the dogs are very happy once you start going. It's when they're stopped that they are just rambunctious and barking. After a very long day in Seward, we got to the Alaska Coastal Railway. We had the gold class for the railway, so we got the extra mirror on the top. So we started in Seward, which is the southernmost point. We went up to Anchorage. You can go further on the land portion, but we just did it Seward to Anchorage. We saw a lot of bald eagles on this trip. There were lots of cool turns and lakes and mountains and glaciers and tunnels, and I loved this railway. There was a nice observation deck that you could stand out on, only if you were in the gold class, so we were able to do that. That's the glacier that we're passing by. And we had a free meal, so I got a burger and Brian got something, and all, of course, the good views were during the meal, so I didn't stay down there very often, and I was outside on this observation deck most of the 4-hour train ride from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. And it got us to Anchorage, which is where we needed to be to fly home, so that was convenient. The other option would have been to take a bus, and the bus ride would be about 2.5 hours from Seward to Anchorage, and I just don't think it would have been as pretty, so I'm glad that we took the train. Lots of pretty lakes, lots of pretty turns, and you'll see pretty soon we went through about 5 tunnels, and then I almost lost my Insta360 near a bridge because I was looking backwards and the bridge came up quicker than I was thinking it would. This was the prettiest part of the trip with this big roundabout with the train. You could see both sides of the train turning. Of course, our meal was downstairs, and so everybody else was downstairs, so I had the observation deck to myself. But look how cool that is, where you can see both sides of the train turning. And of course, the pretty Alaska mountains in the background. Very, very cool. Since it was a night train, we had a very pretty sunset, and a lot of people were out on deck to see the sun setting. The sun set around 9:30 or 9:45 while we were there, so it wasn't too late. This is the bridge that I was talking about that I had no idea was coming, and I quickly moved my Insta360 in, but the river that we crossed was really pretty. And the beautiful sunset, of course. We were right next to a road for most of the sunset, but then the road switched to the other side and the train got pretty views with the lake and the 2 mountains. And after we got back to Anchorage, we went to the Hyatt and spent the night. And our next day was the day that we were going to fly home, but we decided to take a seaplane to Denali.
Float plane time.
So this was the seaplane. We knew that we only had 1 day in Anchorage, and to get to Denali, it was going to be about a 7 or 8 hour bus ride, and we thought we don't have that much vacation, so let's take a seaplane. So we got this Rust's flying service, and we took our seaplane to see Denali. Now, most people, when they go to Denali, they cannot see the main mountain, which is Mount McKinley, also known as Denali, I guess. And so we got a really, really lucky day where there weren't very many clouds in the sky, and we could see the mountain for a very long time. Now, it was a very windy day. I called beforehand and I asked if they were still going to fly because our helicopter rides kept getting canceled because of the wind. And they told me that it was no problem and we would definitely be flying. And we did. We flew, but it was super, duper, uber bumpy. Probably not the best day to fly. But totally worth it to see Mount McKinley because you're not in Alaska very often and you're not there when it's not cloudy very often. As part of the tour, the seaplane was supposed to land in a lake and then spend a little time there and take back off. And originally he said it was too windy, we probably weren't going to be able to land in the lake. But he got us super duper close to Mount McKinley and then he decided that it was okay to go to the lake. So we ended up seeing all these really pretty views. You can see that glacier coming down that a lot of people hike up, but there's the lake that we go and we land in. It was really pretty color. There were cabins all over the lake that obviously you needed a seaplane to get to, but we ended up getting some really cool views and really cool pictures. So here's the lake that we're turning into, and the guy in the front seat gave me all of his videos. And then we ended up landing right here and parking the plane on this little beach, and we kind of just hung out here for, I don't know, 10-20 minutes, and we got to write in the sand, take some pretty pictures, and it was so much fun. And then we ended up taking back off, going back to Anchorage. Brian and I spent the day in the Anchorage airport because our flight didn't leave till about 8:30 at night, and we flew to Dulles and then back to Richmond. So that's it. We loved Alaska.